Number 4.
This happened in June of 2013, when I had just turned 16. Since I had a late birthday, I was the last to get my license all out of my friends. And about a week into driving around with friends, my other 3 friends decided to get some girls and to go to some woods on the other side of town. Because I live in a country of Texas, there was a lot of secluded area. The night arrived and I picked up everyone, and we were able to fit in considering I had a 97 Chevrolet truck with a bed inside. On the way, we had to stop for gas at an unkempt gas station. It was out of city limits in the direction that we were going, and the sun was starting to set. We had to settle on a somewhat secluded area that was about 7.5 miles away from any type of civilization. Well, about 15 minutes into filling up on gas and grabbing some supplies for the trip, my friend, Jeff, he discovered a dead cat with a strange cult-like symbol cut into it. He was looking for a place that he could be alone with this girl for a few minutes, and he had his flashlight on and managed to stumble upon it. We were about to leave, and I was gathering the last few things when I heard a scream come from my truck. It was the girl I was here with, and she was pointing into the woods. My tail light lit up the area, and there were at least 30 men about 10 feet away, with red hoods and robes, with the same symbol carved in the cat on their hoods. I jumped in the truck, and you guessed it, the piece of shit took its time starting up. Eventually, I got it started, and I drove in the opposite direction of the red-hooded men. Once I made it to the dirt road, and my adrenaline finally slowed, I noticed that the back left tire was making a loud scratching noise. I only made it about 15 more feet, and then the truck couldn't move. I hopped out of the truck and grabbed the spare tire I keep under it, and I yelled at my friends to come out and help me switch it. We got the tire off, and I noticed that there was a 7-inch blade stuck in the old tire. I threw it in the back for evidence, as I was going to inform the police about this whole thing. To my surprise, we were able to change the tire in under a minute. Thank God I keep all of the tools necessary for times like this. And I wasted no time getting back in and driving away. As I was driving away, I heard shrieks. I looked in the mirror and saw that these fuckers, they were chasing us on foot, and they were throwing bottles and rocks, and there was gunfire. It shattered one of my tail lights. I gunned the truck, and we all managed to escape unscathed. We were lost, but I really didn't care. I was just happy that we made it out alive. Luckily, Jeff had a GPS on his phone, and we made it back into town and notified the police straight away. They informed us that our experience was the 3rd time that month that there were cult-related crimes involving theft of animals and guns and knives. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't been closer to the truck when they appeared. They sent officers out there, but they never found anything, and as far as I know, they're still out there. This is what the symbol looked like on the robes. And this is a picture of my tire on the day.
Number 3.
To give some context, I'm 22 years old and I live in the UK in a shitty small town called Scunthorpe. The town is literally known for nothing. So, this is something that happened to me a few years back. I started smoking pot at around the age of 20, but my friend who was the same age had been smoking it for 4 years, and after a bad breakup, he finally got me to try it, and as I expected, I loved it. I didn't like having to pay so much for it, so I came up with the genius idea of growing my own. I lived with my parents, who would never have allowed it, but I lived next door to a wheat field, which led to a maze of fields all around. I used to walk in them as a kid, and I thought of loads of areas where I could sneak a few plants without the farmer noticing. I chose a spot next to this great big private pond. It was the size of a field, and next to it was the woodland, which seemed to once have been used for beekeeping and chicken coops, but all of this stuff had been left to rot for a long time. One day, I was going to see the plants and water them, etc., when I noticed a car in the field. Before I could react, there was a dude walking towards me, asking me what I was doing on his land. I quickly made up a story about taking shortcuts and getting lost, and he started asking me what was in my bags or my pockets. I was like, "It's none of your business what's in my bag." In the end, he backed off and just started to go back the way he came, and didn't come back. As you can probably guess, this led to some real issues. My plants were there, and I needed to be able to get them, so I decided I would start going at night at like 2 AM. My sleeping pattern was fucked as it was anyway, and I love long time night walks, so I was fine with it. The first time I went there at night was also the last. I packed everything I needed, including my mag light torch, which, for those who don't know what it is, it's a bulky torch which makes you feel safe because you can knock 7 types of shit out of someone with it. As I was making my trek, I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched when I was walking down the long grassy path next to one of the fields. And because of this, I decided to shut off my torch. I just didn't like advertising where I was. I reached the pond area and heard nothing but trees, and when I got to the pond itself, I had the first, but not the last, shit myself moment of the night. Suddenly, without warning, all of the ducks in the pond just freaked the hell out and flew off. I'd been there before, and I'd never seen a single duck, so it kind of freaked me out. I made my way through the bushes to the little clearing I made for the plants. The moonlight was enough for me to see that they were fine. I gave them some water and got ready to leave. As I reached the pond area again, my heart froze. Someone was moving on the other side of the pond. I could see the shape of a human standing at the water's edge. I wanted to run, but I knew that they were too close to the exit, as around the woodland was a fence leading to an abandoned warehouse. I had tried many times to get in there as a kid, but I just knew it wasn't possible to get in. I thought to myself that I'd have to lay low and wait for them to move and get out of here. I was also wondering, what on earth could someone be doing here at this time? I wasn't sure why, but I felt like whatever this person was doing, it wasn't good news. I waited, watching them for like 10 minutes, and they didn't move. The person eventually walked along the edge towards the only path out. I thought, nice, this guy's finally going. How wrong I was though. He was going to greet someone, another man. I got a better look at him, as he wasn't sheltered from the light of the moon by the trees, but he was wearing a long cloak. I saw that he had no hair, and my instant thought was, so this is where Voldemort escaped to. I know, probably not appropriate, but I've always been that kind of dick who makes jokes in the worst of situations. I'm still crouching down behind a mound of earth watching these two, and to my horror, more of these cloak guys are coming. Apparently, I had arrived early to some kind of crazy person meeting place, in the middle of literally nowhere. To lend some context to the area I was in, it was surrounded by a full 10 miles of pure countryside. The only house in the area was an old one with a fence and a "Danger, do not trespass" sign outside of it. As far as secret meeting places go, it was a good one. These guys went into the woods over their side of the water, and a few minutes later, I could see the shimmering flames of a fire. I knew from my camping days that when you light a fire in the dark, you can't see anything around you, so I knew I had more cover to move, and I could possibly make my way out now. At this point, I started to hear weird chanting. I didn't know or want to know what the hell was going on, to be honest. I just wanted to get out of here and get to my bed and forget about this craziness. So I started walking closer to the path out of there, and that's when I heard the screams. I can't even begin to describe how terrifying this was. Living in the country, I was used to hearing freaky animal sounds, but this was like nothing else. I could feel the sound replaying over and over in my ears. Whatever it was, it sounded horrifying. I was out of here, but one thing I didn't realize, the many people moving that end of the pond had caused the ducks to gather at my end. As soon as I sprinted just a few paces, they spazzed out again, clearly pissed that their sleep was being disturbed, and I heard the chanting, "Stop." I stood dead still, with no cover. I was way too scared to move. A moment later, my heart sank. 2 of the cloak guys, they were heading over to my end of the pond. I didn't know what the fuck to do. There was no escape. I ran into the trees my end and jumped at the first tree low enough for me to climb. I wanted to be as high as possible. It was pitch black in the trees, and nothing was growing in between them. It was just deadwood, which kept snapping as they trod. They were getting really close, but I came up with an idea. I could see something growing on the tree. I started trying to reach whatever it was, a pine cone or something, and when I had one, I threw one as far into the woods as I could, and I heard it hit something. Both men, without saying a word, Just head in that direction. And this is where I took my chance. I quietly got down from the tree and made it the hell out of those woods. I could see the flames still going on and could hear chanting again, but I had enough. I was out of there. Fuck the weed plan. This shit was way too much. I ran to the main path, and just as I passed the area where these cult dudes were doing whatever they were doing, I heard this primal kind of animal noise. I had this weird feeling that whatever this sound was, it was trying to tell these guys about me. Like, it knew where I was or something. I ran out of that field as quickly as I could, getting cuts and getting wet from not looking where I was going, when, finally, I reached the road and I just collapsed. I took out my phone and called the police. It was summer and it got light enough to see at like 4 AM, and at this time, just as the light was making me feel safe, the police showed up. I told them everything, how I couldn't sleep and had been for a walk and got lost. Okay, so not everything, but I told them I'd been trapped by some cult dudes. The police insisted that I took them to the area, saying there was no way they could find it without me. Now, I live in the UK, and although the police were big beefy dudes, they didn't have any guns. All they had was a single 1-can use of pepper spray each. The walk was relatively quiet, but occasionally they'd ask me to retell everything, probably just to pass the time. When we finally arrived, I didn't want to go in. They said that was alright and let me stay on the path. They were there about 20 minutes before coming back. One said he was going to radio for backup. The other asked me to come with him. I followed him into the woods on the other side of the pond, and I was shocked at what I saw. Blood, absolutely everywhere. On the trees, on the floor, on the bushes. It had soaked into the floor and clotted into slugs, as the policemen called them. There were odd carvings in the wood, but one thing I noticed that freaked me out to this day. No single sign of a fire. No ashes. Nothing like that. Just blood. The police dude clearly thought his job had got interesting, and he was good. He kept me posted through the whole thing. Forensics came and took blood samples, and they got excited about an oil barrel half submerged in water, probably expecting to find a body. But after getting a boat out, they found it was full of sand, something the farmer had put in. There was talk about draining the pond to see what was at the bottom, but later on they said something about a lack of evidence. Other than that, there was no sign of anything else going on. When the officer phoned me, he told me they'd struggled to find a match with the blood. He said that this could happen when there's more than one type of blood there. But according to the lab, they found human tissue markers in the blood, as well as those of animals, but not enough to make a clear match. The officer told me he hadn't heard anything like this since he was young, when his father had investigated cattle being slaughtered, one each week in a gruesome way, and had heard of a creepy religion that was always dismissed as kid stuff. He told me to report anything else if I found anything else suspicious. This whole experience was really kind of hard for me, because this pond and its sandbank had always been one of my favourite spots to go and relax when the world got on top of me. I'm including a picture of the pond area showing the bank. The one in the photo is actually the exact one where the dude was standing when I first noticed him. I was over the other end near those trees. I took that one for Snapchat of all things, just to show how peaceful it was, and I'm including another I took of the forest, because I always thought it was a little creepy. This was taken before any of the creepy cult stuff. Since then, I've never been back. I don't know if I believe there are human bodies at that pond. I sure hope not, because I spent some wonderful days there with my friends and my mum. To this day, what freaks me out about the whole thing is that I never saw any cars nearby. These dudes, they all walked there.
Number 2.
Back in 2005, we used to hang out in a huge abandoned fairground that's just a few blocks away from my house. The place was designed by a famous architect, Oscar Niemeyer, and had potential of being one of my country's landmarks, but they stopped building it due to a civil war that broke out in my country. After the Civil War ended, the place became completely abandoned, and it kinda looks like what a fair would look like after an apocalypse. Since it's restricted to the public, naturally, people started spewing out rumours about the place. I didn't believe them, but the most popular rumour was that it had a dangerous satanic cult living underground there. One day, being curious teenagers, we started trying to find a way to sneak into the place, and eventually we found a crack in the concrete fence that could fit us and we could easily go in. It was an absolutely amazing place. There were a lot of buildings and there was so much vastness to the area. It was around 100 kilometers square and completely abandoned. We felt free to do whatever we wanted since it was restricted to the public and we were completely alone in the area. We started to hang out there almost every day. We explored more and more of the buildings and found that there were so many underground tunnels to explore. One time, we decided to explore the insides of a concrete dome structure. We got in and it was kind of an indoors Roman stadium where the stage is underground. We circled the area and found a very narrow stairway that led down. Once we got down there, we started exploring all of the corners of this underground complex. And that's when one of my friends noticed something. It was a wall with 4 or 5 faces made of clay stuck on it. The faces, they were featureless and really creepy. It felt really uncomfortable to look at them. For some reason though, we started to detach the faces and smash them on the floor. I detached the last one, and when I saw its back, my heart dropped. A reverse pentagram was carved into it, along with the word evil written 4 or 5 times in my language. We nervously brushed it off as some people who did it just to scare people. I took a picture of the wall after we detached the faces. I went to this underground complex many times, and sometimes we would find mattresses on the floor, and then other times they were gone. We always used to wonder, why would anyone sleep down here? And why would the mattresses be there sometimes and disappear other times? It obviously meant that someone was down here. One time, we wanted to venture farther into the fair, so we started walking towards a building far away from the rest of the buildings, and while walking, we started to smell a horrible smell that just got stronger and stronger the more we advanced, until I almost stepped on something. I looked down and I saw a rotting carcass of a goat. Not a whole goat, but just the lower part. Immediately I thought, who the fuck would sneak in, kill a goat, slice it in 2, and just dump the lower part in the middle of nowhere? We proceeded and we found some iron stairs. While going up on the iron staircase, we started to notice a thin line laid on every step of the staircase. After we got to the highest step in the staircase, we saw a disemboweled bird. Its intestines stretched over all of the staircase. Another time, we found an iron stick shoved in a bird. Despite all of this weird stuff that happened, we never stopped going there. We always felt like explorers and adventurers while hanging out there. Needless to say though, the more we went there, the creepier things became. One day, we had a bigger group of people. We were 7 people strong this time, and we were just chilling out, smoking, and drinking on one of the place's structures. The sun was setting, and some of my friends started to get a bit scared, but we usually stayed there until dark anyway, so we decided to stay, and we started calling them pussies for being afraid of being there after dark. And that's when the calm guy from our group pointed out to something and yelled, "What the fuck is that?" I looked where he's pointing, and I saw something that was rotating around 200 meters away. It was a man wearing a robe, and it kind of looked like a typical ghost costume. He was turning and turning constantly with his hands away, and his costume spreading due to the rotation. He kept turning and turning until he reached a thick tree and disappeared behind it. We kept gazing upon the tree, waiting to see if he'd come out of there, but nothing. 30 minutes passed and nothing else. Creeped out by this, we just decided to leave this place. A year later, I went there with 2 of my friends, one of which never saw the place. I was very excited to show him all of the tunnels and structures, and also, he was always the kind of person who was afraid of the dark, so I thought it would be fun to try and scare him a bit. After spending the day showing him the place, I decided to show him one last eerie underground tunnel before leaving. To reach this tunnel, you have to go down a concrete spiral stairway until you reach the entrance of the tunnel. A gate used to be on that entrance, and sometimes it was closed and sometimes it was open. Until this day when it was completely detached. We never made a big deal out of it, but it was kind of weird. Now, the tunnel itself, it isn't that long, and at its end you find 2 bathroom doors. These bathrooms are the creepiest and look like something straight out of a horror movie with spider webs all over the place, rusty sinks and destroyed stalls. The mirrors were the most unsettling though, with stains all over them and too much dust to even recognize your face. When I invited my friend to come and check out the bathrooms, he just refused. I insisted so much, but he just refused and begged us not to leave him alone and go there without him, as the entrance of the tunnel itself was scaring him. I kept insisting, but eventually gave up since he was just too afraid to go, so we decided to just go back. Now, I have to note that I was the closest to the entrance of the tunnel, and the rest were still on the stairs. The moment we started to go back up the stairs, we heard a bone-chilling growl from within the tunnel. I could have sworn the growl was kind of human though. We ran our way up and ran the hell out of that place, not ever looking back. The sound came from the tunnel, and there was no way to reach that tunnel but through the stairs. My bet is that one of those weird fucks was inside there, just waiting for us. I'm glad my friend didn't want to check out that bathroom after all. I can't imagine what would have happened if we decided to go inside.
Number 1.
Here's a little backstory about my mother. My mother was the daughter of a preacher who was my grandfather. It was the year of 1978, and my mother had a friend whose name was Sarah. Sarah and my mother were both members of my grandfather's church. My mother described Sarah as funny, smart, and a caring person. But one day, Sarah decided to join the People's Temple run by a man named Jim Jones. Sarah was so rapt about Jim Jones that she followed him into a small South American country called Guyana. My mother, almost prophetically, had a strange feeling that Sarah wasn't going to come back. Later that same year, in November, Sarah moved to a small place called Jonestown in Guyana. Sarah, along with 909 people, and most of them being children, 304 according to the coroner, they were found dead by drinking Kool-Aid laced with cyanide poisoning. The very next day, the police in Guyana found cult leader Jim Jones with a bullet in his head. Sarah was cremated, along with many others who committed suicide in one of the biggest suicide deaths in world history. This is a recording of the event, but please be warned, this recording is very disturbing. You will hear children dying and you will hear people screaming. It's no joke, this is an extremely disturbing recording. Listeners' discretion is advised. My mum's friend Sarah, she's within this recording, somewhere. G'day mates, it's B-Buster here. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video guys, and remember, don't go joining any dangerous cults, and always practice safe sex. Get it? Safe sex, as in S-E-C-T-S? Come on, you have to admit that was pretty good. Anyway. Thanks again to the Hive members that bravely shared their story for us all here, and I hope you're all doing really well. For the chance to have your story feature in a video, you can send your story to my email, which is in the description below. And as always, keep them coming guys, as this channel relies upon your stories to continue. Also, please do me a favour and just state in your email what your story is about in the description, and also provide me with a short written statement of consent, just so that I can be above board with everything. And also remember to tell me in the email if you would like to remain anonymous, and change any names if you don't want particular names to be shared. So, because Christmas is coming up guys, I thought maybe if I could get some Christmas stories together that I might try and make a video. The stories can be about anything really, but they just have to have occurred on Christmas or in association with the day in some way. So I guess some ideas around this could be Christmas shopping, decorating, scary Santa stories, anything like that really. So if you have any Christmas stories, be sure to get them in quickly, and if I get enough stories, I'll try and make something for Christmas. Also guys, I've started working on my personal Draw My Life story. It may take a little bit more time to get it all together, but it is on the way. I know a few of you guys have asked about it, so I thought I would just give you guys the heads up and just let you know that I am in the process of making it. It just may take a little bit of time. Also, many of you guys have actually requested another Q&A, so I'm thinking about getting Snapchat and doing a Q&A through Snapchat videos. I have to work everything out technology-wise, but bear with me, and once I have everything set up, I'll be sure to let you guys know as soon as you can send your video questions in. But as always guys, it would be awesome if you could like, share, comment and subscribe if you're new. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram for updates throughout the week. You can also catch me on my second gaming channel, all of which have links in the description below. Thanks again for tuning in guys and for all the love and support, and I'll see you mates in the next one.